ShadowCrew goes on to make the front cover of Forbes, August of 2004, headline, Who's Stealing Your Identity? October 26, 2004, the United States Secret Service, they arrested 33 people, 6 countries, 6 hours. I'm the only guy publicly mentioned as getting away. They pick me up 4 months later, and they give me a job. And I'm the guy that continues to break the law from inside Secret Service offices for the next 10 months until they found out about it, at which point I took off on a cross-country crime spree, stole $600,000 in the space of 4 months, wake up one morning on the United States Most Wanted list, go to Disney World, get arrested there, sent to prison, escape from prison, arrested again. I was a lifetime of career criminal. I knew it. I was an expert at it. I was good at it.
So, Brett, I mean, we were rapping before the show. I mean, you're just an awesome sort of energy. You're a big personality, right? For the audience, as we were sort of warming up, right? Brett was right in there, super social, right? Really friendly, really nice guy. And in a lot of cases, you know, if I didn't read the bio, I would have never expected this to be. But I mean, let's kind of start from the beginning, right?
Okay.
So tell us the story. Where did this all begin for you? And then how did you end up going down that road?
Oh, geez, man. Where did it all begin? I mean, that's the question, right? So my name is Brett Johnson. And as you pointed out, I was referred to as the original Internet Godfather. That's not where my life of crime begins. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky, if some of your listeners don't know it, Eastern Kentucky is one of these areas like the Panhandle of Florida, parts of Louisiana, that if you're not fortunate enough to have a job, you may be involved in some sort of scam, hustle, fraud, whatever you want to call it. My mom was basically the captain of the entire fraud industry in that area. And I'm talking about a woman that no crime was too big or too small. At one point, she steals a 108,000-pound Caterpillar D9 bulldozer. At another point, she takes a fall in a convenience store and tries to sue the owner. That's my mom. We had a neighbor she acted as a pimp for. So that's my mother. My dad was a good guy, but he was the enabler. He didn't want my mom to leave. So if she wanted to commit a crime, he would sign on to it. If she wanted to abuse someone, like the children, he wouldn't stand in the way because he was scared of her leaving. Finally, she does leave him. She takes me and my sister. I was 10. My sister Denise was 9. She moves us back to Eastern Kentucky, and she used to leave us home for days at a time. And my life of crime begins. We had been home for a few days alone, no food in the house. My sister Denise, she walks in one day. She's got a pack of pork chops in her hand. And I'm like, where'd you get that? She's like, I stole it. And I was like, show me how you did that. So she takes me over, shows me how she's boosting food, stuffing the food down her pants. And I'm like, that's the best idea ever. So we start stealing food, and it grows into other things, toys, games, jewelry, music, books. Mom comes home, sees all the stolen loot, asks where it came from. I'm like, we found it. She's like, no, you didn't find that. My sister, Denise, she stands up. Denise never lies at all. She's like, we stole it. My mom looks at my sister, show me how you did that. And she joins us. And not only does she join us, but she calls her mother to join us as well. We become this intergenerational shoplifting ring in Eastern Kentucky. Used to take these road trips. They'd go to the department store and steal clothes and jewelry. I'd go to the bookstore and steal books because that's the guy that I am. And that's where it begins. And it's important to understand for your listeners that I don't blame my childhood on my choices as an adult. When you're a child, you can't help what the adults in your circle do. You're going to follow that. But when I became an adult, I had the opportunity. I was given a choice. I could continue down that road of crime, or I could do the right damn thing. And I chose the bad path. And, my sister Denise, for example, she didn't do that. Other than that one shoplifting experience, she goes on to be a great citizen, a good teacher, a good parent. Me, I just was the guy that kept on going. And as I kept on going, I understood that it wasn't just my mom who was involved in crime. It was every single member on that side of the family. So I grew up committing insurance fraud, burning homes for cash, faking accidents, breaking and entering, trafficking drugs, illegally strip mining coal, document fraud, charity fraud, you name it. I had an experience in all of that until finally I branched off on my own. I faked a car accident to get the money to get married, got married, moved to Lexington, Kentucky to go to university. And that's where my life of cybercrime begins. I was doing these little scams around Lexington, not doing really well, found eBay, really liked eBay, didn't really know how to make money on eBay. And back then there was a guy, he used to be a host on Fox News named Bill O'Reilly. And Bill O'Reilly, before that, he hosted Inside Edition. It was a 30-minute TV news show.
I remember. I used to watch it religiously.
Yeah, it was a good show. And the one they had that night was about Beanie Babies. And so the one they were profiling, for those who don't know, Beanie Babies in the mid to late 90s, they were these little small stuffed animals that were highly collectible. And they went for buku bucks. The one they were profiling that night was called Peanut, the Royal Blue Elephant, and it was going for $1,500. And I was very naive. I was thinking, well, hell, it's Kentucky. There's got to be one in a bin somewhere. So I skipped class the next day, started to go around all the shops looking for it. Took me about 3 hours to figure out, no, idiot. He's not in the shops. He's on eBay for $1,500. But they had these little gray Beanie Baby elephants.
Like that, you got right one there.
Yeah. So bought that little fella for about $8. Stopped by a store on the way home, picked up a pack of blue dye, went home, tried to dye the little guy. I didn't know that these things are made out of polyester. They don't hold dye very well. When you get them out of the bath, they look like they've got the mange. But I ripped a lady off for $1,500. I found a picture of a real one online, posted it. She thought I had the real thing. She wins the bid. And I convinced her to send me a couple of money orders before I sent her this animal. And that's where my life of crime begins. That finally blossoms into ShadowCrew. So ShadowCrew is the forerunner of cybercrime as we know it. It's the genesis of all that. There were three sites. There were Counterfeit Library, ShadowCrew, and Carter Planet that begins cybercrime as we know it. I built and ran Counterfeit Library and ShadowCrew. ShadowCrew goes on to make the front cover of Forbes, August of 2004, headline, Who's Stealing Your Identity? October 26, 2004, the United States Secret Service, they arrested 33 people, 6 countries, 6 hours. I'm the only guy publicly mentioned as getting away. They pick me up 4 months later, and they give me a job. And I'm the guy that continues to break the law from inside Secret Service offices for the next 10 months until they found out about it, at which point I took off on a cross-country crime spree, stole $600,000 in the space of 4 months, wake up one morning on the United States Most Wanted list, go to Disney World, get arrested there, sent to prison, escape from prison, arrested again, finally serve out my time. And, what's interesting with me, most of the time for the bad guy, that's where the story ends. If he ever gets out, he commits the crime again, goes back to prison and rots away there. I was given the opportunity through my sister, my wife, and then finally the FBI to turn my life around. I took it, and fortunately today I'm blessed with a life that I really don't think that I deserve, but I'm damn grateful to have. And I work my ass off every day to protect people and businesses from that type of person that I used to be.
Man, what a life. I was going to say, what a story. Like, what a life. So many questions. First, what happened to Mom?
Mom is still alive. Mom still continues to commit crime. As a matter of fact, she burnt a house for insurance cash, I think last year. So that's my mom. My sister has not spoken to my mom in over a decade. I've not talked to my mom in probably 4 or 5 years. I love my mom, but she is a very toxic person and just not a good person. So it's healthier for me to distance myself from that and not take part in that. I wish the best for her. I truly do. And I honestly don't think she will ever, be accountable or accept responsibility. Yeah, she won't. Yeah. She's not going to turn her life. She's like 79 now. So she's still committing crime and still blaming everyone else for it.
And dad? Is dad around?
No, my dad passed away October 2nd of last year. And I was very fortunate that the last year of his life, I was able to move him in the house with me. He got very sick. I was able to move him in the house with me, take care of him, and finally get to know the man. And, it turns out, a lot of people say, he's a good guy or he's a bad guy. And one of the lessons that I've learned through life is it's not being a good or a bad guy. You're just a person. And people are capable of doing good things and bad things. And to me, at the end of your life, it's like you've got a scale. And does the good outweigh the bad at the end? And I think that with my father, I can say that it did.
That's good. That's good. I lost my father 13 years ago.
It's rough, man. You're being part of that lost dad club. That's the rough stuff.
Right. Doesn't matter how old you are. Like there's just something with, I think specifically as a male, right? So,
amen.
I remember my father looked at me as he was sort of, passing. It's in his last few hours. He's like, I'll never forget this line. He's like, I know, I really wasn't the best father. Right. But if there's anything you need to say and get off your chest and sort of let out, now's the time to do it.
Right.
And I did. I had a ton of shit that I wanted to just barrage with. Right. And I was like, I looked at this man and I said, fuck, and I was like, all good. Right. Not you're forgiven. Didn't even go there, but all good. You did the best you did. Right. And that's it. Right. In a lot of cases did do the best in some capacity.
I mean, you're right. And I had much that same conversation with my father, and, he looked at me and he said, I'm sorry. And I got to say, that was exactly what I needed to hear. Right. I didn't need to hear the reasons behind it. I didn't need to hear any justification or anything else. I just needed to hear that he was sorry that it happened. And that really made everything better at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. In a lot of cases, you forgive for yourself, not for them.
Yeah, amen. Amen on that. Truly.
Yeah. The other side of this, I mean, man, what an interesting example or case study of nature versus nurture, right? So, we're born with a genetic profile that comes from sort of mom and dad, and then depending on the environment that we're raised in, and you were raised in an environment with, mom committing crimes and sort of, leaving you guys to, in a lot of cases, to survive by yourself. You ever seen the show Animal Kingdom?
I have. Of course,
as you were telling me about, I'm like, this is like you. This was the show about you, almost, right?
Well, the thing is, and I struggle with this. I truly do. I'm adamant about saying that my choices as an adult are mine. It's like I must say that. I have to accept that. But at the same time, I absolutely realize that my childhood paved that path for a life of crime. And for me, that dichotomy, I struggle with that a lot. I truly do. Because, on one level, I say, yes, my choices are mine. But on another level, I absolutely understand that childhood led to me making that choice at the same time. That easier path was absolutely kind of predetermined throughout.
Yeah. But I mean, again, the discipline, that's what I also hear as I listen to you talk. I just hear this or get the theme and the energy from you, which is the importance of discipline, right? Making the hard decision and pushing forward. So, in quotations, the fact that you were able, I'm not even going to say to turn your life, but to pivot, to change the trajectory, to change the direction, takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness and discipline. And as you said, the odds were against you. I mean, the chances of you reoffending, repeating, ending up down that road of prison, I mean, again, the odds are stacked against you. So I would imagine your wife and do you have kids, by the way?
I've got 2 stepsons. They're outstanding human beings. I want to kill them about once a week, but I love them and they're very good boys. They truly are.
But having that support structure around you, right? Having that those people to help keep you on the right track. So,
it's, for the listeners that are out there, it's, unless you've been through something like that, you really don't understand how scary it is to make that choice to change your life, to do that pivot, as you say. I was a lifetime a career criminal, and I knew it. I was an expert at it. I was good at it. To pivot toward that legal side of life, you can't have two masters. You have to choose one of the two. You can't be legal and on the side commit crime. So you have to give up that life that you knew, that you were good at, that you felt security in. Even though I got caught, I still felt secure in that. And that's a very scary prospect to do it. I remember I had just began my speaking career, and I did not know if I was going to be successful at it. So I was on the side. I was preparing in case I failed to go back into cybercrime. And Microsoft had hired me as a consultant. It was about the third month working for them, and I had been flying to Seattle about once a month. I came back home to Birmingham, and I was the only one awake. And I was sitting there, and it really hit me. It was like this aha moment of, I'm not going to commit crime again. And when I realized that, it was like this emptiness in me, because it was that thing that I had relied on, that life of crime, was now gone. And when that happens, it's like, how are you going to fill that void if you know that you're not going to do the thing? I would
imagine there's like an addiction sort of piece to this as well.
Yeah, it's a moment that I'll never forget. And for those people who have went through something like that, whether it be an addiction or, stepping away from an abusive relationship or a life of crime or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. It's there's a comfort in that type of toxic life. Like there's a comfort in being, wallowing in self-pity a lot of the time. But when you finally decide to change your life, it's an eye-opening moment, and it's a
scary moment too.
It's very scary, but at the same time, it's one of those things that's highly rewarding. You get to experience a life and gain an insight that I think most people would never have.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. To your point, most people grow up in bubbles, right?
Yeah.
And they got their blinders on, and as long as they're in their bubble, they're very happy.
That's
right?
it. That's it.
And closed-minded in a lot of capacity as well, right? Truthfully, and no way near your story, I found myself at the wise old age of 15, just falling into the wrong crowd and, going down a road. And my mother actually saw this, and she shipped me off to Israel. And she's like, you're going to go live in Israel for the next 4 or 5 months. You're going to go live in a kibbutz, right?
All right.
I remember it was a moment in my life where you kind of hit that fork in the road where, hey, you could go left or right, right? And look, thank God I had my mother in that capacity to sort of guide that. But it's an exciting world, right? I mean,
it is.
That's where we use the terminology addiction. So I'm really interested. So coming back, so you're consulting with the Secret Service, which again sounds like a movie. I'm like, I swear I've seen this movie where they catch the bad guy and then the FBI make him like the consultant, and
right.
He helps sort of, these other guys, or helps just get better at sort of, fighting crime, right? Because that's
right.
the joke about crime, right? I mean, I grew up in South Africa. So if you put up a wall, they figured out how to climb it. You put up security, like little spikes on the wall, they found out how to get past that. You had a guard and a dog, you figure out how to get past that, right? So it's always like one step ahead of you, right? So I could appreciate how important the consulting that you're doing is specifically for the good guys. But
thank you.
Come back to this. So you're working with the Secret Service. I mean, what was that time like? You were living both worlds. Like you were working for them, but you were still sort of doing your hustle on the side.
Sure. So back then, when I talk today, I talk about the motivations of online crime. And I say there's 3 motivations. You've got status, cash, and ideology. Status, can you impress your criminal peers? Cash is easy enough to understand, but ideology has someone pissed you off and you're out to get them specifically. My motivation back then was cash-based, not because I wanted nice stuff, but because I'm the guy that buys love. I have trouble showing love in a healthy manner. So I used to shower the people that I loved with gifts, expensive crap. I was engaged to a girl back then, a very toxic relationship. So I was arrested February 8th of 2005. She had no idea what I did for a living. I had lied to her. I was arrested February 8th of 2005, three weeks before I was supposed to get married. Secret Service, they put me in jail for a week, flew in from New Jersey, pulled me out and said, hey, we've got all this evidence against you. What can you do for us? And I was like, hey, I'll do whatever you want me to do as long as I can get back with her. So they got me out. They didn't understand that my primary goal was to be with her regardless. And I was convinced that took money to do that. So I continued to break the law from inside the offices. And what that looked like was I was working at the Columbia, South Carolina Secret Service field office. I was in what they called their war room, which was basically a 30-foot room by 10 feet wide. They had me on a laptop hooked up to a 50-inch plasma monitor mounted on the wall. Outside internet line in the room at all times were 2 Secret Service agents and a South Carolina law enforcement official. They had their own desktop computer hooked up to an outside line right next to mine. On my laptop, they had Camtasia and Spectre Pros, so it was a keylogger and it took screenshots every 15 seconds. So the first 2 weeks, they were very diligent, but when I'm online, I'm extremely scary. I tend to have, 15, 20 windows open. I communicate with all these windows at the same time, bouncing around. It's very difficult to pay attention and see what I'm doing all the time. The first 2 weeks, they were very diligent. They asked questions, but they got bored with that after a couple of weeks. So they started to watch porn while I'm doing my job. And I'm sitting there watching it like, shit, if they're going to do that. And at the same time, I'm understanding, they're collecting so much information on a nightly basis. And back then you couldn't parse through that information, with AI or anything like that. So I was like, they're never going to go through the data that they're capturing. So why not just commit crime? So I started to break the law from inside of the offices itself with them in the room with me. That's, there's a show on Netflix called Web of Make Believe that talks about that. They found out about it about 10 months later, and they revoked my bond at that point in time. The judge lets me back out, and I go off on that cross-country crime spree. That's what that was like. The truth of the matter is that the Secret Service, law enforcement as a whole back then, they really did not understand the cybercriminal mindset. They likened us to drug dealers and counterfeiters, people like that. And we are similar to that, but we are different at the same time. We really have problems with authority. More than that, we are really the puzzle type of people. We are consistent about trying to figure out ways around systems all the time. And that's really important to us. It's almost an addiction. But there's even something more. If you look at the more experienced, more successful cyber criminals that are out there, it's like we're on the spectrum. It's like we have a degree of Asperger's syndrome. We get on a subject and we're locked in on that. Even today, I'm like that. I'm on the good guy side, but my wife and my friends will tell you that if I'm doing something, it's like everything else disappears except for that thing that I'm focused on. And that's the exact same way it is for a lot of these upper tier criminals that are online. You'll see when I was online, I would typically spend 16, 18 hours a day on the internet. I would only take a break to go out and steal money out of ATMs. So, that's what they didn't understand. And today they're much better at that. They absolutely understand that. They know how to track people down. They're very efficient with that and they're very good with that. The problem today though, is that cybercrime has evolved at the same time. Cybercrime, if it were a country today, it would have the third largest economy on the planet. You've got millions of these criminals that are out there. And at the same time, they've become so efficient and effective that new cyber criminals coming into the environment, they don't really need to know anything. Everything's off the shelf. You can buy tutorials. You can take classes. You get walkthroughs on how to commit these crimes. So you can come in and be very successful at committing crime without really understanding how to commit the crime itself.
Right. So, coming back I wanted to ask this. So, why the Secret Service? So, isn't the Secret Service for the presidential sort of protection, and it would be FBI? So, how does Secret Service sort of end up with this?
So the Secret Service existed before the FBI, and the initial Secret Service charter was there to protect the nation's monetary supply. It was only later that the Secret Service got the job of protecting the president and other nation's dignitaries. So they still have that charter of protecting the monetary supply. So yes, you're absolutely right. The FBI handles cybercrime, cybersecurity. The Secret Service does that as well. That still happens today. Now, what people don't really understand is that those two agencies, even today, they don't really work with each other. They don't share and exchange information. And a lot of that has to do with budgetary concerns. A lot of that has to do with, hey, we don't want someone messing up our investigation. So they keep things compartmentalized. That was the way it was back then. And back then it was really a race for budget money at that point. So you had these people that didn't really understand the people who were committing the crime. They certainly didn't know how to track them down, and they didn't know how the crimes were being committed, and they were trying to stop it. And people like us, we ate them alive at that point.
I want to ask you a question about prison and escaping, right? Because again, it sounds like another movie. And then I want to get into sort of, what you were talking a little bit about before, which is that human condition of just being lazy, right? So you got these Secret Service agents that are sitting in the room with you. They get bored, lazy asking the questions. They sit down, they start watching their porn. You're able to do your thing. And I think that's also the challenge with today's things like identity theft, right? People are lazy, right? They're not taking the certain protocols or operating certain practices to protect themselves, right? And then you'll give us some tips on what we can do.
Sure.
But how long were you in prison for? How did you escape? And those two things.
I was,
if you're allowed to tell us, by the way.
No, I'm absolutely allowed. I was sentenced to, I think 8 years total, served right at 7.5 is what I served. The escape. So what happens is my mom leaves my dad when I'm 10 years old. I don't have a conversation with my father until I'm 33. He shows up at my sentencing at federal trial, stands up in front of the judge. He was like, Your Honor, Mr. Johnson, Brett, I want him to have a good life when he gets out, to have a good chance. He is more than welcome to live with me when he's released. My dad starts to visit me at the prison that I'm at. I was at a minimum security. And in all honesty, I had been planning on escaping. I had told everyone that if I was sentenced to any more than 60 months, I was going to leave. So my dad starts to visit, and about the third visit in, the man looks at me. He's like, I've been reading about you online. I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's a lot of money you made. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, can you teach someone how to do that? So when I first started to tell that story, I lied. I said that I thought my dad was back in my life, and he wasn't. He just wanted to know how to steal money. And over the next several months, I got to the point where I was like, that's not really true. I think that what it was is my dad hadn't talked to me for years, and he didn't know how to communicate with me. So he communicated with me talking about crime, and I chose to manipulate the man into helping me escape. My dad passed away last year, and I've changed my mind. And I think that both things can be true. I think that, yes, he absolutely wanted to know how to steal some money. And I think that absolutely he wanted to reconnect with his son. And yes, I absolutely manipulated him into helping me escape. He had $4,000 cash to his name. I got him to give me that, drop off a change of clothes, a cell phone, and a driver's license. I had a job working outside of the prison, and I escaped. My dad, for years, I taught him how to do tax return identity theft. I'm the guy that created that crime. And for years after that, he would always look at me and tell me that when he was breaking the law and doing that was the most fun that he had ever had in his life. And I'm conflicted about that because I don't think he really ever understood the damage that crime does to people. But that's what happened, and that's how I escaped. Nothing romantic, nothing exciting. I'd like it to be, like the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, I was going to say, climb through 5 miles of shit to get to
exactly
to get to Zihuatanejo.
It wasn't like that. As a matter of fact, when I talk to production companies a lot, and we're working on a book and stuff like that, and one of my agents, he looks at me, he's like, we could spice up that escape, have like a helicopter or something like that. And I was like, no, man, let's not do that.
No, that's good. But yeah, you were in minimum security, which was, call it in quotations, a white collar crime. Right, as you said, you were able to work outside of the prison. So yeah, no, it makes sense.
Now, after that, I spent 8 months in solitary confinement, and they sent me to a real prison where, I went through 3 prison riots, saw 4 suicides, 2 people literally beaten to death, and I got a taste of what prison really is at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. That must have been a scary time, right?
Yeah. It gets your attention. The interesting thing about human beings, and again, you don't really understand it until you've been through something like that, but we are very good about adapting to our environment. Whatever that environment is, we can make that our norm. And it absolutely became my normal.
Yeah, which is fucked up. As you said, we can adapt, which becomes normal, right? And I think it's a little bit of your story as well, which is you start doing things and it just kind of gets normal and just becomes part of it, and it's patterned, right? So, man, super. I don't even know which way to go. I'm like, should we go left? Should we go right now? Which way do we want to go, right? Let's jump into maybe some stuff for the audience, which is, the world of identity theft today. What could people do to sort of, protect themselves? I'll kick off with a quick story. So, my wife comes barreling up to me. I don't know. This was 8 months ago, maybe 10 months ago, right? Freaked out. Okay. So what happens? She's selling something on Facebook Marketplace, right? Someone says, hey, I've sent you the money, right? I'll come pick up that couch. She replies with, I haven't received it, so I will email you once I've got confirmation. Anyway, fast forward this. Message comes back saying, change my mind, please refund my money. Right? He replies with, haven't received your money. She then gets pictures of our kids, her. I know who you are. I know who your children are. Then sends videos of people getting their head chopped off and executed and says, I'm part of this gang. We know where you live. By the way, what she's also now done is she sent them a pin to the location, to the house, to where you could pick up the couch.
Right.
Anyway, freaks out. But you quickly realize, I mean, this is someone in Africa on a computer that is just, copying the Facebook profile and stuff like that. But today we live online, right? People are just, here you go. Here's my entire life online.
Right.
But it really freaked her out. I mean, like emotionally, she was fucked up for a few days after that, right? Just from the videos that she saw. So that's sort of one sort of way people are being taken advantage of online. But what freaks me out a lot, what I think about is identity theft, like God forbid. So walk us through that. How do people end up, getting their identity stolen? What could they do if that does happen?
Sure.
And then maybe let's even walk that back, which is what can we do to avoid this from happening in the future?
So, talking about, let me address what your wife went through first. The reason that scams work, a lot of the reason, is because the scammer is able to get the potential victim to set aside reason and logic and react emotionally. If I can get you to react emotionally, I can get you to give me that information, access, data, or cash that I'm looking for. Okay. So that intimidation absolutely works, especially where she sent that pin saying, hey, this is where we live. From that point, the attacker is able to access look at the Facebook page, get pictures of the kids, send over some pictures. This is what I'm going to do to your family. And I know exactly where you live. That causes a very emotional response. You're not thinking reasonably, rationally, or logically at that point in time. All right. So that's what you have to understand. It works the same way if that scammer is advertising something on Facebook Marketplace or eBay, an item for sale that's hard to find. Say, back when the PlayStation 5s were hard to get, you would have all these scams going around because people wanted these things. They had a desire for these things, and that desire makes it easier for a scammer to come in and get that potential victim to act in an emotional response way. All right. So you need to remember that. If you ever receive some sort of unsolicited response. I'm talking about a knock at the door, a piece of physical mail, an email, a phone call, anything else like that, text message, what have you. If you ever receive something that's unsolicited, that ultimately asks for some sort of information, access, data, or cash, you need to be very cautious. You need to be on your guard at that point in time. If you're on the phone and someone's talking to you, the best possible thing that you can do is hang up, is say, I'll call you back. And the reason you do that is, first of all, they're not calling from that number, but more importantly, it gives you the opportunity to take a breath and let that rationale, let that reason take hold again. And you can start to think things through. As soon as you disengage, your mind kicks back in at that point. Those emotions start to subside. So that's important to understand. All right. When we're talking about identity theft online, it's important to understand that your information is available. Period. I'm asked all the time, what can I do to make sure that an attacker can't get my PII, my personal information? And the answer is nothing. It's already been available. Last year alone, we had 2,570 just reported breaches. Of those reported breaches, 57 billion records were compromised just last year. So your information is available. If you can accept that, then you ask the question, well, since my information is there, what can I do to make sure an attacker can't use it if they get it? And we can answer that. In the United States, the way you take care of that, there are basically three major things. The first thing is you freeze your credit, all right, of every single person in the house, because children are the number one victims of identity theft. 1 in 4, 25% of all kids will be victims of identity theft. So you freeze the credit of every single person in the house. That stops all new account fraud. An attacker can't pull your credit. They can't open up new accounts in your name.
How do you do that? How do you freeze your credit?
And I'm not sure how it works in the UK or what have you, but right. In the United States, we have 3 credit bureaus. We have Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax.
Yeah, I'm with Equifax, by the way. I have that whole profile with them.
So you contact each one of these credit bureaus and you tell them, you can do it online or you can call them. You tell them, I want to freeze my credit. Now, at that point, they will try to convince you to pay for some sort of monitoring service instead of freezing the credit. No, a credit freeze is free. So you freeze the credit. That stops an attacker or anyone else. They cannot pull your credit report. They cannot open an account in your name unless they have your specific permission. Okay, so you have to do that with all 3 credit bureaus. Now, understand that only stops new account fraud. Works great for kids. As adults, we've got existing accounts. We've got bank accounts. We've got credit cards. We've got stuff like that. It doesn't stop fraud on those. So at the same time, you have to monitor those existing accounts and you have to place alerts on those accounts where you can. For example, Discover Card has a $0 alert, meaning that if I go on the dark web, I buy your credit card, stolen credit card for $12 to $14, which is what they sell it for. I ping the card just to see if it's still active. You get a text message saying, hey, someone's trying to use your card, and you can have it shut down. So you have to monitor accounts, place alerts on those accounts where you can. The other big thing, so that's 2 things: freeze credit, monitor accounts, place alerts. The other big thing, how many people out there use the same or similar logins and passwords across multiple platforms? That's a big one, because the answer is 80% of the population does that. And the problem with that is this thing called credential stuffing. As an attacker, if I send you a phishing email that comes from, say, a financial institution, your level of awareness is high enough that you will probably, most likely, you'll recognize that as a phishing attack. But if I send an email that comes from Hulu, is your level of awareness going to be as high? No, it's not. You're probably going to say, Hulu, does anyone even watch Hulu anymore? That's what you're going to say. But if you use the same password and login for that you use for your bank account, as an attacker, it's automated. I plug it into a program. I go to sleep. As I'm asleep, that program tries to log into tens of thousands of different websites overnight. I wake up the next morning. I've got your bank account, your credit cards, your Hulu account. I've got everything across the board. So because of that, it becomes very important to practice good password security. Now, what does that look like? Well, that looks like a password manager, authenticators, passkeys. I mean, hell, you can even, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. If you're at home, you can grab a notepad, much like this one right here. You can grab a notepad, write your passwords down in it. But you have to practice good password security. Now, understand at the same time that as a human being, we lack the capacity to be random. We cannot be random as human beings.
We're predictable.
So it's better to rely on an authenticator, a passkey, or a password manager to handle those passwords for you.
Yeah.
So those are the three big ones.
That's
you
awesome.
do that.
And that's real practical advice. And it's something that we can all do, like I am with Equifax. So I've got the monitoring there.
Right.
I have a password manager. It's actually for the audience. It's called 1Password. It's an awesome program.
It's a good program.
Right. And I've got, 150 different logins, right? Which is and it's not a joke, right? Because you gather these logins over the years, right? And if you're using that 1Password for everything, and the joke about that is it is very common for people to actually have their password called password.
Right.
Which is it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, managing that.
So, and understand that's the basis of everything. From there, you can have multi-factor authentication. You can do all this other stuff. The idea for good online security is to make sure that your situational awareness is as good online as it is in the physical world. In the physical world, we tend to have good situational awareness. We know if things are going south in an environment. That does not tend to translate well in an online environment. But we need to have that awareness in that environment as well.
Right. Well, what's very common now is the text message. I mean, I get it from Netflix, like, hey, your payment didn't go through this month.
Right.
Or your credit card expired.
Right.
And like, there's this automatic, like, oh shit, let me go update it. Right. And then you take this moment of pause. You think, wait a minute, the credit card's not expired.
Right.
And my payment always goes through on Netflix. So, and then you could go in and log in on Netflix versus click that link. The other big one that I get recently is DHL. Right. Like, hey, we got a package for you. We need your authorization. And then what's very common in Canada, and I think it's in the US as well, you get in US IRS, but in Canada, you have the CRA calling you. Hi, this is so-and-so from the CRA. We're calling about your tax return, or we're talking about your filing and stuff. Right. And that's where you're saying like, hey, let me call you back. Right. Get off, call 1-800-IRS, give them your information.
Exactly. And since you're bringing that up, I understand that another way, in order for me to defraud you, I have to be able to establish a degree of trust with that potential victim. If I can't get you to trust me, you're not going to give me cash, information, access, or data. All right. So how do you establish trust online? It's a combination of technology, tools, social engineering. We inherently trust our technology. We trust those cell phones, the laptops, the websites. What we don't understand is that attackers use tools to manipulate that. So, instead of seeing the phone number that they're calling from, you see the phone number of the IRS or the CRA, and you tend to trust that immediately. So that opens the door, and then we see how good of a con man or a liar or what they call a social engineer that person is in manipulating you to give them what they want.
Right. It's a wonderful old saying, which I'm sure you know, which is, I never knew they were a con man until I was conned.
Right. Exactly.
It was, a con man always shows up with a smile.
Right.
You never know until after. Right?
And understand, saying con man or social engineer, and I'm guilty of that as well. That's just a really nice way of saying a liar. So that's what you need to remember.
Yeah. Very cool. Man, I can't wait to see what happens in the future with the movie and the books and all that kind of stuff. You were also interviewed on Jordan Peterson, yes?
I've been very fortunate in my life. I've been on Jordan Peterson. I've been on Lex Friedman, Megyn Kelly, some really big guys. Your show. I'm very fortunate that people like to talk to me, and I'm very thankful for you bringing me on. Truly.
Well, besides being a great story, right? I mean, you're a good storyteller. I think just the lessons in your story and experience is what's so valuable, right? I think this is what the whole world of like real mentorship is, right? Which is let me teach and let me help, right? In fact, that again, I think the most powerful thing about your story is the decision that you said, you know what, I'm going to go this way in life, right? Because mom didn't, right? Your sister sort of fought and sort of, stayed on the sidelines and sort of really went in a different direction. Dad kind of fell into it. I'm sure your entire network of people was really, again, in that world. So, wow. I can't believe we're at the top of the hour. Got so much. We might have to do part 2, by the way.
But let
me ask you, I mean, for the audience, if they wanted to follow you, learn more about you, find you, drop your links, how could people get in touch with you?
Sure. So these days I speak across the planet. I consult. I've got some YouTube shows and some podcasts. I've got the Brett Johnson Show. My big thing these days, what's most important to me in life is figuring out how to be a better human being than I have been. So the Brett Johnson Show on YouTube and on different podcast platforms, that's the thrust of that show. If you're interested in crime, I've got the Criminal Thoughts podcast. It's also available on YouTube. And recently, I have dove into the crypto environment. So as a matter of fact, yesterday I stopped. If you follow me on Twitter under Gollum Fun or Brett Johnson, you'll see that I stopped a multi-million-dollar scheme yesterday, which I'm very proud in doing. But you can find me on Twitter under Brett Johnson. You can find me on LinkedIn under Brett Johnson. You can follow me on my YouTube shows or on podcasts, The Brett Johnson Show or The Criminal Thoughts Podcast.
Awesome. And Instagram is The Brett Johnson Show as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's another Brett Johnson, which I accidentally followed, which we're going to unfollow you, the unofficial Brett Johnson. I don't know who you think you are with your 1 T, all right? The real Brett Johnson has 2 T's. Man, what an honor. And, on that note, if we are able to do part 2, I'd love to sort of go down that road of like digital currency and Bitcoin and sort of this world we're going to with money.
I look forward to it.
To the audience, go and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Check out the Brett Johnson Show. We're going to have all of these links in the show notes. So if you didn't write them down, don't worry. They'll be there to click. Brett, at the end of the episode, we come to the most important question, which is, what do you think we could all do to be better humans tomorrow?
Sure. I end my Brett Johnson Show every day by saying, at the end of the day, just do the right damn thing. I was a guy who, my entire life was about victimizing people, was about hurting people and only caring about myself. And it took me a long time to come to the realization that why we're here on this planet, for me at least, is to understand who I am and why I do the things I am, to know thyself, but also to help your fellow human being. If we can remember that, and I don't care about your political affiliations, I think that's just a distraction. If you can just do something every single day to help someone, I think that's what makes society and makes our lives better at the end of the day. So that's what I would say.
Awesome answer, my friend. Awesome answer. A big horn in the background, giving that one like, here we go. But you want to know something funny? I think I just got a scam call that just
you probably
came
did.
Through. And I was like, maybe we should answer this right now and see what they say. Brett, you're a gentleman. You're a scholar. Thank you for taking the time to be on the show. And to the audience, don't forget to go follow Brett. Stay up with him if you're interested in booking him to come and do some keynotes and some speaking. All the links will be in the bottom. If you like today's episode, don't forget to like it. If you like it so much, go ahead and smash those stars because it helps us get the show out to more people. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I don't know what you're doing, but you definitely need to subscribe as well. Stay happy, stay healthy, and we'll see all of you next week.